Alright, this is Seth Kermode for Modern Philosophy 311, and this is the final exam. So, first off, for John Locke, I did question 1, and I dove into Frank's. Frank's is just my preferred book this semester, and for this question, he talks about how ideas are imprinted on the mind. And he talks about how the concept of red, any obvious example would be something like the idea of the Martian three-headed snapper, terror of the outer reaches of the solar system, which lives by biting off the heads of passing by space explorers. This is an idea I have, and which now you have, and yet it is something that none of us have experienced. Is that a disproof of Locke's theory? And then he goes on to say, no, it's a central feature of Locke's theory. There are different types of ideas. We can pair ideas within our mind. He goes on describing Locke. So in your question, you say take the example of the concept blue. Do you have the concept of every possible shade of blue? No, I don't. Just like we don't have the concept of every possible shade of light in the spectrum of light, or we can't perceive things like X-rays or infrared or ultraviolet. We have machines that can do that, but we still don't perceive the rays in the same way that they are emitted because we have to use colors that we can perceive. Like for X-ray, it's black and white, and for infrared, it's like greens and reds, and ultraviolet, it's like purples and blues. And so we have to use things to fit to our perceptions. So, of course, there's probably possible shades of blue that we can't see, just like or actually, there's an animal called the mantis shrimp, and supposedly it can see a total of 12 more colors than humans can because they have different types of rods and cones and they have more of a specific kind, so they can perceive more than just the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue. So they can do things like that. And if the next question you ask is language, separate words for aqua and navy, would we have the concept of blue? Well, of course we would. And here's an example I'll give you. Mom, Dad, and Grandma, we were painting a room in our house, and so we went to Lowe's to go get some paint cans. And we're at the desk, and the lady gives us the cards with all the different shades of white, and we were getting white, green, and pink. And so she gives us with the different shades of white and with the different shades of green with the different shades of pink. And there were a couple shades of white that looked exactly the same to me and my dad, and a couple shades of green that looked exactly the same. They're called something like eggshell and plasteel, and then soft rain and springtime. Stupid names that they give to paint colors. And my mom and grandma were looking, and they were trying to decide between them. Each of them were trying to, do we want the springtime and plasteel? Do we want rain or soft rain and eggshell? And me and my dad were just both going, well, the whites are the same colors and the green cards are the same colors. Just pick. It doesn't matter. There is literally no difference. And they were getting mad at us because they thought we were teasing them. When in fact we aren't. We're both just baffled that they're arguing about the same color of white versus the same color of green. So clearly, whether we have the words for them or not, some people will perceive them as separate subsets of colors, and some people won't. Like my dad and myself versus my grandma and my mom. And that's how I think Locke would answer those questions. I don't think he would use the Lowe's, the Home Depot example because no Home Depot in his time. But I think that's in the spirit of how he would answer the question. And for Berkeley, I did question number 2, and it's talking about the problem of evil. And let's go to page, sorry, I have it bookmarked, 227. And here Franks gives the example of if the difference between my having good eyesight and my being short-sighted, for example, consists only in the clarity of visual ideas God gives me, then given that he could give me clear ideas as easily as he could give me foggy ones, it seems rather unfair of him to victimize me in this way. If the difference between the crippled child and a healthy child is just that when they decide to run through the meadow, he gives one of them running through the meadow in the sunshine ideas, and the other one pain on the knees and falling on the floor ideas. And God seems to be guilty of playing a particularly nasty practical joke. And I think it's more than a practical joke. I think it's sadistic and evil, if you're going to say something like that. And God isn't sadistic and evil. So, honestly, for the problem of evil, I don't think Berkeley has a leg to stand on, and it's because of one reason, and it's because of the reason that God is the direct giver of pain. There's no, I'm pinching myself and I'm causing myself pain. It's I'm pinching myself and God is causing me pain. He is the sole causer of all sorts of pain, all evil, all suffering. There's no middleman. There's no God created the earth, gave us free will, took a step back, and watched what we did with it. It is God created humans, and gave us perceptions, and then just started screwing with us. There's no freedom. There's no evil. Evil is directly linked to God, and there's no way to um, sever that link. And is this more compelling than Leibniz's answer? Honestly, I'm about the same and compelling because Leibniz is just as worse, but in a different way. Because he's saying that we live in the best possible world, but there's all this evil. Okay, how can God be all powerful if there's and still create the best possible world without evil? If I can perceive of a best possible world without evil, then clearly God can make it because my perceptions and my experiences and my ideas in my mind are tiny compared to what God is and what God can create. So for me, they're on the same level, and they're both baloney. And then let's talk about Hume, my favorite philosopher of the semester, definitely. And I'm going to do, for him, question number 2, the one about morals. And he says, right, Franks tells him that moral terms are important. People use them to attempt to control their own behavior and that of other people when they say that is right, that is noble, that is wrong, that is wicked. And in a time of social change, moral authority is claimed by competing sets of people, competing sets of aims and ideals, and the figure of the well-intentioned woolly bishop, blah, 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 etc. Basically saying that morals are created by the people, they're created by in social hierarchies by bishops and church leaders to control the masses through religion. And if I were Hume, I would not have a problem with this because Hume, there's really probably no God. I don't think he ever blatantly states that there is no God, but for him, there's probably no God, or there's an agnostic. There could be a God. I'm waiting for more of a sign because in his causation, he basically states that there's no causal chain. There's no link between cause and effect. So if that's the truth, and there's no link between cause and effect, then God can't be all powerful because God cannot cause creation. There's no creating. There's just here's God, and then here's the world being created. It's not God breathing, the world into being. It just can't happen. So because of that, morals are for him. Since there's no God, there's no real logic behind morals either. It's because he also goes on to give the example on the next page about books and stealing. And I'm a struggling student. I need these books, and logically, it would dictate that the amount of knowledge I will gain from the books will outweigh the one act of stealing this book. And it will outweigh it greatly because I'm going to be a doctor, let's say. So I need this book, but that's not how morals work. For God and for morals, all sin is on the same pedestal. Well, no sin is above the other. And see, so that's how morals aren't logical for Hume. And he also goes on to say that they're psychological. There's a psychological reason. And this reminds me of the scene from Vikings. It's a show on History Channel. If you haven't watched it, you should. And it's the King of England versus the King of the Vikings, and they're arguing about whether the gods exist. The King of England says, or the King of the Vikings says that there's no way the gods exist. It's just impossible. And the King of England comes back with that could be true. I'm not saying whether it is or it isn't. Basically, he's basically saying this, but the very fact that God could exist is necessary to the people. The people need God to exist. It's a psychological thing. It's a thing in the head. So so basically, Hume is doing the same thing. He's saying that there's no logic behind morals. Morals really don't exist. It's human reaction to it. but people need morals to exist. People need to know how to act socially, you know, because it's the same thing about causal relationship. People need causes to exist. It's something within our brain, something within our psyche that doesn't allow us to think. Where it's just the way we're wired. So people need causes and people need morals in order to function properly in a well-organized society, a civilized society. And that's really it. See ya.